The Cursed Tomb of Meneptah, Part 1. Chapter 1, The Parchment of Shadows. Dr. Amelia Carter had seen her share of ancient mysteries, but nothing could have prepared her for what awaited her that morning. The dusty, sunlit archives of the British Museum had become her second home, a place where history whispered its secrets to those who dared to listen. She was examining a collection of newly acquired artifacts from an excavation near Thebes when a junior curator approached her, holding a sealed parchment with an uncertain expression. "Dr. Carter, this was delivered for you this morning." "No name, no return address," the young woman said, handing over the fragile scroll. Amelia's brow furrowed. She took the parchment carefully, noting the strange wax seal, an ancient Egyptian sigil of Set, the god of chaos and storms. A flicker of unease passed through her as she turned it over in her hands. Who would send her something like this? She slowly unsealed the parchment, revealing a map, ancient, tattered, and covered in cryptic hieroglyphs. The faded ink depicted what seemed to be the Valley of the Kings, but there were markings indicating a hidden chamber, a tomb long lost to time. The name etched at the bottom sent a shiver down her spine. Meneptah, High Priest of Seth. Meneptah was no ordinary priest. Legends painted him as a master of forbidden rituals, a sorcerer who wielded power that even the pharaohs feared. His followers, the adepts of Seth, were said to have sealed his tomb with curses so terrible that even grave robbers had dared not approach it. Some whispered that he never truly died, that his spirit lingered, waiting for the right moment to return. Amelia took a deep breath, steadying herself. This wasn't just any archaeological discovery. This was an invitation, a challenge. And she had never been one to back down. Within hours, Amelia had gathered her closest allies in her private study. Around the table sat Marcus, a brilliant yet reckless historian with a penchant for deciphering ancient texts, Elena, a skilled linguist and puzzle solver, and Samir, a local Egyptian guide who had saved them more times than she could count. But the most imposing presence in the room belonged to Amenhotep. The resurrected pharaoh had become an enigma to all of them. Once a ruler of Egypt, now a man out of time, he had chosen to join their team rather than reclaim a throne long since buried under centuries of sand. His piercing amber eyes studied the map with intense focus, his fingers tracing the hieroglyphs with a familiarity none of them could match. "This tomb should not exist," Amenhotep finally spoke, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. Meneptah was more than a high priest. He was a seeker of darkness, a man who delved into things best left forgotten. If his tomb remains hidden, it is because it was meant to be. Amelia met his gaze, a fire burning in her own. "That may be true, but someone clearly wants me to find it. The question is, why now?" Before anyone could answer, a sudden crash echoed through the study. The window shattered inward, and a black scorpion landed on the table, its tail poised to strike. Samir reacted first, slamming a heavy book down on the creature before it could sting. Elena gasped. "What in the world?" Marcus paled. "That's no accident. That's a warning." Amenhotep's expression darkened. "The adepts of Seth. They know." A chill settled over the room. The adepts of Seth were more than just legend, they were a secret society that had operated in the shadows for centuries, dedicated to reviving the lost arts of dark magic. If they were involved, it meant one thing. They were searching for the tomb too. Amelia exhaled sharply. "Then we have no choice. We find Meneptah's tomb before they do. And we stop whatever they're planning." The decision was made. The race had begun. And the shadows of the past were waiting. Chapter 2, The Journey into the Sands. The team wasted no time. Within a day, their bags were packed, their supplies secured, and their destination set, the heart of the desert, where the tomb of Meneptah lay hidden beneath centuries of sand and secrecy. Dr. Amelia Carter sat at the front of their convoy, gripping the parchment that had started it all. She traced the faded ink of the map with her fingertips, committing every twist and turn to memory. She knew this journey would be more than an excavation, it was a race. And the adepts of Seth were already moving. The blistering Egyptian sun bore down upon them as their caravan of off-road vehicles rumbled through the vast dunes. Samir led the way, his sharp instincts guiding them through treacherous terrain. Marcus rode beside him, flipping through pages of ancient texts, mumbling translations under his breath. In the back, Elena compared the map to aerial surveys, and Amenhotep sat eerily still, his gaze fixed on the horizon. This place. Amenhotep finally murmured. It was once known as the Valley of the Forgotten. Those who entered were not meant to leave. Amelia turned toward him. Then why was it erased from history? His amber eyes flickered. Because some knowledge is too dangerous to remember. Hours passed in uneasy silence until Samir suddenly tensed. We are not alone. A trail of dust rose in the distance. Through her binoculars, Amelia spotted a line of black-cloaked riders on horseback, moving swiftly, purposefully. Marcus cursed. The adepts of Seth. They're ahead of us. Amenhotep's voice was grave. They are not merely scholars of dark magic. They are zealots. They will kill for what they seek. Elena swallowed hard. Then we better make sure we get there first. Samir slammed his foot on the gas, and the vehicles surged forward, kicking up sand in their wake. The race had truly begun. As twilight descended, they reached the first marker from the map, the ruins of an ancient outpost, half buried by time. Sandstone pillars jutted from the earth like skeletal remains of a forgotten past. The air was thick with the scent of age and secrets. They set up camp under the watchful gaze of the stars, each member taking turns on watch. Amelia sat by the fire, turning the map over in her hands. Something about it felt incomplete. Amenhotep sat beside her, his expression unreadable. You feel it too? She nodded. There's something missing. The tomb is here, but there's no clear entry point. No temple ruins, no passage markers. It doesn't make sense. Unless. Amenhotep's gaze darkened. It was never meant to be found. A sudden gust of wind howled through the ruins, snuffing out the fire for a brief moment. Amelia shivered, though the desert night was still warm. A low whistle cut through the air. Then. A dagger buried itself in the wood beside Amelia's hand. Shouts erupted as figures cloaked in black descended upon them from the dunes, their blades glinting in the firelight. The adepts of Seth had arrived. Marcus drew his pistol, firing into the darkness. Samir tackled one of the attackers, knocking him into the sand. Elena barely dodged a blade that slashed through the air where she had been sitting moments before. Amenhotep moved like a phantom, his reflexes almost inhuman. He disarmed one of the attackers with a single, brutal motion, his voice a thunderous command in ancient Egyptian that sent shivers through Amelia's spine. The battle was chaos, sand, steel, and desperation. Amelia barely had time to react before an adept lunged at her. She rolled, grabbing the dagger that had nearly pierced her hand, and slashed at her attacker's arm. He hissed in pain, stumbling back. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the adepts retreated into the darkness, leaving behind only their dead and the echoes of their whispered prayers to Seth. Breathing heavily, Amelia wiped the blood from her forehead. That wasn't a full attack. They were testing us. Amenhotep's jaw tightened. No. They were sending a message. We are not the only ones searching for the tomb, but we are not welcome. The desert wind howled once more. The real danger had only just begun. Chapter 3, The Buried Secrets. The silence that followed the adept's retreat was more unnerving than the attack itself. The desert, once a vast and open expanse, now felt like a cage closing in on them. They weren't alone out here. And the enemy wouldn't stop until the tomb was theirs. Amelia stood over the bodies left behind, her mind racing. The adepts had struck quickly, but their true purpose wasn't to kill. They wanted to warn them. To drive them away. But it would take more than threats to stop her. Samir kicked at the sand, muttering a curse under his breath. They'll be back, and next time, they won't hesitate. We need to move. Amenhotep knelt beside one of the fallen attackers, studying the symbols carved into his robes. His fingers traced the sigil of Seth, his expression grim. They are not only protectors of the tomb. They are worshippers of Meneptah. To them, he is not just a legend, he is their god. Elena paled. And they believe he can return? Amenhotep's gaze was unreadable. Perhaps. Or perhaps they seek to make it so. Marcus exhaled sharply, running a hand through his disheveled hair. Then we'd better find the tomb before they do. Amelia nodded. They had to press forward. But first, they needed to decipher the next step in the map's mystery. She spread the parchment on a flat stone, pressing it down with her palms. The map led them here, but something was missing. Where was the entrance? Amenhotep studied the faded glyphs, his fingers trailing over the delicate ink. The markings speak of a gate of trials. A test before the tomb may be entered. Samir frowned. A test? That doesn't sound good. Amenhotep continued. Meneptah was a master of deception. He would not allow his secrets to be uncovered easily. The entrance is hidden. The question is how we find it. Amelia's mind raced, scanning the ruins around them. The ancient outpost had once served as a watchpoint for tomb guardians. If the adepts were searching, they must have already uncovered clues. And that meant there was something here they hadn't yet found. She stood abruptly. The outpost. It wasn't just a marker, it was a key. If the tomb was meant to be hidden, the priests wouldn't have carved the entrance into the dunes. It would be somewhere protected. Somewhere that can only be revealed when the time is right. Marcus's eyes lit up with realization. A celestial alignment? Amelia nodded. Ancient Egyptians often built their tombs to align with the stars. If Meneptah's followers followed the same practice. Elena caught on. Then the entrance will only reveal itself at a specific time. Samir groaned. So we wait? Amenhotep studied the sky. Not for long. The constellation of Seth's wrath reaches its zenith before dawn. If the tomb follows the same pattern, then... A deep rumbling interrupted him. The ground beneath them trembled. A great shift in the sands. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. The tomb was waking up. The ruins groaned as a section of stone collapsed inward, revealing a dark, gaping void beneath the outpost. A hidden passage. Marcus whistled. Well, that's one way to find a door. Samir shot him a look. Or a grave. Amelia ignored them, grabbing her flashlight and stepping closer to the edge. The tunnel below was ancient, untouched by time, its walls adorned with carvings of serpents and dark deities. A gust of stale air rushed out, carrying the scent of age, dust, and something else, something that didn't belong. Amenhotep peered into the darkness. The path is open. But whether it leads to salvation or damnation remains to be seen. Amelia took a steadying breath. There was no turning back now. She lifted her lantern, its flame casting eerie shadows along the tunnel's walls, and stepped forward. Beneath the desert, the true journey had begun. Chapter 4, The Chamber of Serpents. The cold breath of the tomb slithered over Amelia's skin like unseen fingers, its presence thick with the weight of ages. The moment she and her team stepped through the collapsed stone opening, the world above seemed to vanish, swallowed by the endless darkness beneath the desert. Their lanterns cast flickering halos of light over the walls, illuminating serpentine carvings that twisted and coiled like living things along the corridor's stone surface. The sigil of Seth dominated the walls, carved into nearly every inch of the tomb's entrance. A warning, or a promise? Marcus let out a slow breath as he ran his fingers over the engravings. Charming decor. Nothing like a pit of snakes to welcome trespassers. Amenhotep's voice was low. They are not mere symbols. They are guardians. The priests of Seth did not rely only on stone to protect their secrets. Samir shifted uneasily. Meaning? Amenhotep met his gaze. Meaning, if these symbols are here, the serpents may be as well. Their footsteps echoed eerily through the passage, the silence pressing against them like a weight. The deeper they went, the stronger the feeling of being watched. Amelia couldn't shake the sensation of something moving just beyond their torchlight, slithering along the edges of the stone corridor. "Watch your step," she warned. If Meneptah was as paranoid as they say, he wouldn't have left his tomb unprotected. As if on cue, Samir's boot hit something off. A sharp, mechanical click. "Move!" Amelia shouted. The floor beneath them gave way, stone shifting as venomous cobras poured from hidden crevices, their hissing filling the corridor like a living storm. Samir barely had time to react before a massive stone slab dropped from the ceiling, sealing the exit behind them. They were trapped. Elena screamed as one of the serpents lunged at her, its fangs glistening with poison. Amelia swung her lantern in a desperate arc, the flame startling the creature back just in time. Marcus yanked Elena behind him, his revolver already drawn. "There's too many," he shouted, taking aim at a serpent that lunged from the shadows. Amenhotep moved like a phantom. His hand shot forward, and before Amelia could process what she was seeing, he muttered something in ancient Egyptian. The cobras froze mid-strike. A heartbeat later, they slithered back, retreating into the darkness. Amelia turned to him, her chest rising and falling. "What did you just do?" Amenhotep exhaled slowly, his expression unreadable. Meneptah's magic may be dark, but his people still followed the old ways. A pharaoh's command still holds power, even here. Samir wiped the sweat from his brow, muttering something under his breath. "That was too close. And I hate snakes." Marcus nudged the sealed entrance. "More bad news. We're locked in." Amelia gritted her teeth. "There has to be another way out. This is a trial. We passed it, so there must be a next step." Elena pointed ahead. There. At the far end of the chamber, a massive stone door stood half buried in the wall, flanked by two statues of Seth. Their jackal-like faces bore grins of cruelty, their stone eyes watching. The hieroglyphs above them read, "Only the worthy may pass." Amenhotep stepped forward, his fingers tracing the inscriptions. Meneptah would not have allowed just anyone to pass into his tomb. This must be the second trial. Amelia frowned. "And what's the test?" Without warning, the statues shifted. A deep, guttural voice filled the chamber. "Prove your worth, or be forgotten." The door began to open. A cold wind howled from within, carrying whispers from the past. Amelia exchanged glances with her team, their faces pale in the flickering torchlight. There was no going back now. The door to Meneptah's domain had opened. Chapter 5: The Trial of Shadows. As the heavy stone door groaned open, a wave of stale, ancient air rushed out, thick with the scent of dust, decay, and something more, something unnatural. The tunnel beyond was a yawning void, an abyss untouched by time. Amelia stepped forward cautiously, her lantern casting trembling shadows along the walls. The carvings lining the corridor had changed. Gone were the regal depictions of gods and kings, in their place were twisting figures, their faces contorted in silent screams. Hieroglyphs spoke of a trial, a test that only the worthy could endure. "I don't like this," Elena murmured, running her fingers along the symbols. "These aren't warnings. They're records." Marcus peered over her shoulder. "Records of what?" Amenhotep's expression darkened. "Of those who failed." A heavy silence fell over them. Samir exhaled sharply. "Well, that's reassuring." They pressed forward, their footsteps muffled by thick layers of dust. The passage sloped downward, narrowing until the walls seemed to press in around them. The air grew colder, and Amelia's lantern flickered, its flame dimming as if something unseen was drawing the light away. Then, suddenly, the corridor split. Before them, 3 identical paths stretched into the darkness, each appearing more foreboding than the last. The hieroglyphs above them read: "One path leads to truth. One path leads to despair. One path leads to death. Choose wisely." Elena swallowed hard. Fantastic. Another death trap. Amenhotep studied the glyphs, his fingers tracing the carved words. "This is the trial of shadows." Meneptah believed in deception. "The path forward will not be what it seems." "No pressure," Marcus muttered. "Just a life-or-death decision." Amelia turned to Amenhotep. "Can you read anything that hints at the right path?" He closed his eyes, inhaling deeply. "There is only one way to see through the illusion." Without warning, he took a step forward, and vanished into the center passage. Elena gasped. "He's gone." Panic surged through Amelia, but before she could react, Amenhotep's voice echoed back, clear and steady. "This is the way. Follow my steps exactly." She hesitated for only a second before stepping forward. Darkness swallowed her whole. For a moment, there was nothing. No light. No air. No ground beneath her feet. Then she emerged into a vast chamber, a space that should not have existed beneath the sands. The walls were lined with mirrored surfaces, reflecting not just her team but distorted, flickering versions of them. In one reflection, Amelia saw herself aged and withered, her eyes sunken with despair. In another, she saw herself standing alone, her team gone. A third reflection made her stomach turn. In it, she saw herself kneeling before a shadowy figure, her expression blank, her hands outstretched in supplication. The air crackled with unseen energy. The mirrors whispered, voices shifting and overlapping, indistinct yet filled with meaning. Marcus swore under his breath. "This isn't right." Amenhotep's voice was tense. "Meneptah's magic still lingers. This is not just a tomb, it is a place where minds unravel." Amelia took a slow step forward, reaching toward one of the reflections. As her fingers brushed the glass, a ripple spread across the surface. And suddenly, the reflections moved. Not just imitating them, acting on their own. In the glass, her team turned to face her, their eyes empty, their mouths forming words she could not hear. "This is a trick," Amenhotep warned. "Do not listen. Do not look for too long." But it was too late. The figures in the mirrors stepped out. The air rippled, and before them stood perfect copies of themselves, identical in every way except for their eyes, which were hollow, black voids. Samir took an unsteady step back. "Tell me this is another illusion." The doppelgangers moved forward. The reflection of Marcus lunged at him, a knife appearing in his hand. Marcus barely had time to react before he was thrown to the ground, his own twisted double trying to plunge the blade into his chest. Amelia was frozen in shock as her own double advanced, eyes locking onto her with eerie precision. "Prove your worth," it whispered. "Or be forgotten." Then, it attacked. Amelia barely dodged the first strike, her instincts kicking in as she drew her knife, slashing toward the false version of herself. The battle erupted into chaos, the real and the unreal clashing in a fight where only one side could remain. Amenhotep's voice rang out above the fray. "Destroy the mirrors. They are the source of the illusion." Amelia spun, her lantern's flame flickering wildly as she caught sight of the largest mirror in the chamber, the one that had first rippled when she touched it. Summoning every ounce of strength, she hurled her lantern at the glass. The impact was deafening. The mirror shattered, and the illusions screamed, their forms distorting, then dissolving into smoke. The chamber trembled, the shadows retreating. Then, all fell still. Panting, Amelia wiped sweat from her brow, looking around at her shaken but alive team. Amenhotep exhaled. "The trial of shadows is over." Marcus groaned, rubbing his ribs. "That was only the second trial? What the hell is waiting for us next?" Amelia didn't answer. She was staring at the far side of the chamber, where a new passage had appeared, carved into the stone like a wound in the earth. Elena's voice was quiet. "I think we're about to find out." And with that, they stepped forward, into the deeper dark. Chapter 6, The Whispering Labyrinth. The passage ahead was unlike anything they had encountered before. The air felt heavier, as if the very walls pulsed with unseen energy. Their footsteps echoed unnaturally, stretching into whispers that faded into the dark. Amelia's lantern flickered, struggling against the shadows that seemed to lean in closer with every step. "This place feels wrong," Elena murmured, her fingers tracing the stone walls. "Like it's alive." Amenhotep walked ahead, his expression unreadable. "It is." Amelia tightened her grip on her lantern. "What do you mean?" "The adepts of Seth were not just priests," Amenhotep said. "They were architects of fear. This labyrinth was designed to break the minds of those who entered." Marcus exhaled sharply. "Wonderful. Just when I thought this couldn't get any worse." They walked for what felt like hours, following the carved hieroglyphs along the walls, but the deeper they went, the more the passage changed. The air shimmered, and suddenly, the path they had just come from was gone. "What?" Samir spun around, eyes wide. "That's not possible. We just came through there." Amelia's heart pounded. The walls had shifted. The corridor behind them was now an unbroken wall of stone. "It's a trap," Amenhotep said grimly. "The labyrinth is changing." Elena's voice was hushed with dread. "Then how do we get out?" No one had an answer. As they pressed forward, the whispers began. Faint at first, like the rustling of leaves, then growing louder, urgent, pleading. "Help us. Turn back. He waits for you." The voices were everywhere. Amelia stopped in her tracks, her pulse quickening. They were not alone. "I don't like this," Marcus muttered, rubbing his temples. "It's in my head." Samir clutched his knife. "Mine too." Amelia's breath hitched. The walls were not just stone, they were engraved with the faces of the dead. Hundreds of them, their eyes hollow, their mouths open in eternal, silent screams. The whispers came from them. "These are the ones who failed the trials," Amenhotep murmured, his expression grim. "Their souls are trapped here." Elena shivered. "And what happens if we fail?" No one answered. A sudden boom shook the passage, and the whispers turned to screams. The shadows moved. From the depths of the labyrinth, something stirred. A shape uncoiled from the darkness, massive and serpentine. A guardian. Not of flesh, but of living shadow. It lunged. Amelia barely had time to react before the serpent of darkness struck, its jaws snapping shut inches from her head. Samir pulled her back, just as Marcus fired a shot, the bullet passing straight through the creature. "It's a shadow," Elena shouted. "Weapons won't work." Amenhotep stepped forward, his voice a command in ancient Egyptian. The air rippled, and for a moment, the creature hesitated. Amelia didn't waste a second. "There has to be another way through." "The faces," Amenhotep said urgently. "They whisper because they know. Listen to them, find the path." The team scattered, pressing their ears to the carved faces, desperately seeking the right whisper amid the cacophony of voices. "Left," Samir muttered. "Left, left, left," Amelia turned. A narrow passage had opened along the far wall. Their only chance. "Go." They ran, the serpent giving chase, its body weaving through the labyrinth, closing in. They reached the opening, diving through just as the passage slammed shut behind them. Silence. The creature was gone. Panting, Amelia looked around. They were in another chamber. But this one was different. In the center stood a stone altar, and atop it, a single golden dagger. Amenhotep approached cautiously. "This is no ordinary weapon." Elena frowned. "Then what is it?" Amenhotep's voice was quiet. "A key." Amelia met his gaze. "To what?" He hesitated. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, "To Meneptah's tomb." A shiver ran through the group. They were close now. And the real danger was just beginning. Chapter 7, The Hall of the Forsaken. The golden dagger gleamed in the dim light, its blade reflecting the flickering torches around the chamber. It was unlike anything Amelia had ever seen. Its hilt was adorned with inlaid obsidian, and strange glyphs pulsed faintly along the edge, as though whispering secrets in a forgotten tongue. Amenhotep was the first to move. He approached the altar with slow, deliberate steps, his amber eyes dark with contemplation. "This is a relic of power," he murmured. "Forged in shadow, bound to an ancient will." Amelia glanced at him. Then the legends were true? Meneptah's tomb wasn't just sealed with stone, it was locked with magic. Amenhotep nodded, reaching out a hand toward the dagger, but as his fingers brushed the hilt, the room shook violently. The torches snuffed out. A sudden, bone-chilling cold swept through the chamber, and in the suffocating darkness, the whispers began anew. Only this time, they were not confined to the walls. A deep, inhuman voice echoed through the air. "Who dares disturb the High Priest's rest?" The stone beneath their feet trembled, and Amelia's breath caught as the statues lining the chamber began to move. They had assumed them to be carvings, depictions of long-forgotten priests, kneeling in eternal prayer. But now, the stone cracked and crumbled away, revealing desiccated corpses beneath, wrapped in decayed ceremonial robes, their eyes hollow voids of darkness. "The Forsaken," Amenhotep whispered, his voice grim. "Meneptah's most loyal followers. They swore an oath to protect his secrets, even in death." One of the figures lurched forward, its bony fingers outstretched toward Amelia. She stumbled back, heart pounding, as the thing hissed her name. Marcus raised his gun, but Amenhotep stopped him. "No. They are bound by the tomb's will, you cannot kill what is already dead." Samir clenched his jaw. "Then how do we stop them?" "The dagger. It was the key." Amelia's mind raced. "The glyphs on the blade, what do they say?" Elena, still wide-eyed with shock, squinted at the markings. It's a command. A ritual command. It says, only the chosen may pass. Blood will seal the way. Amenhotep's gaze sharpened. A sacrifice. A horrible realization gripped Amelia. It wants blood. One of the Forsaken lunged toward Marcus, its skeletal hand gripping his wrist with terrifying strength. He gritted his teeth, struggling to pry himself free. Amelia! He shouted. Whatever we're doing, we need to do it now. She had no time to think. With a sharp breath, she grabbed the dagger and slashed her palm open. The moment her blood touched the blade, a pulse of golden light erupted from the dagger, illuminating the chamber. The Forsaken screeched, clawing at their hollow eyes, their bodies convulsing as the magic surged through them. One by one, they collapsed, their forms turning to dust. Then, as abruptly as it had begun, the silence returned. Breathing hard, Amelia clenched her bleeding hand, watching as the dust settled. The dagger's glow dimmed, its power spent, for now. Slowly, the walls at the far end of the chamber began to part, revealing a hidden passage. Amenhotep exhaled. The final gate has opened. Samir wiped sweat from his brow. Great. We almost died, but sure, let's walk through the creepy door. Elena managed a shaky laugh. At this point, do we have a choice? Amelia tightened her grip on the dagger and stepped forward. They had come too far to turn back now. With one last glance at the now silent chamber of the Forsaken, the team crossed the threshold into the true depths of Meneptah's tomb. They were close. Too close. And something was waiting for them. Chapter 8, The Antechamber of the Cursed. The passage beyond the Hall of the Forsaken was unlike anything Amelia had seen before. The walls were smooth obsidian, polished to a mirror-like sheen, reflecting their flickering torchlight. Strange symbols shimmered on the surface, not carved, but seemingly woven into the stone itself, pulsing faintly like the heartbeat of something ancient and waiting. Amenhotep was the first to step through, his expression unreadable as he studied the writing. This is no ordinary tomb. These walls hold magic, magic older than Meneptah himself. Samir's voice was barely above a whisper. What does it say? Amenhotep traced a hand over the shifting script, his jaw tightening. A warning. It says, "Here rests the keeper of the damned. Those who seek to enter must pay the toll." Elena swallowed. What kind of toll? No one had an answer. As they moved deeper, the air grew thicker, like the tomb itself was pushing back against their presence. The floor sloped downward, leading into an expansive antechamber. Massive statues lined the walls, towering jackal-headed figures, their obsidian eyes glinting with an eerie awareness. Marcus hesitated. Tell me those are just statues. A low, grinding sound filled the chamber. The statues turned their heads. Amelia's breath caught. They were watching. Then, one of them moved. A massive foot crashed onto the stone floor, shaking the chamber as the guardian stepped forward. 7 feet tall, its body was sculpted from blackened gold, but its movements were fluid, too lifelike for mere craftsmanship. Hieroglyphs flickered across its surface, glowing in rhythmic pulses. The guardian raised its colossal staff, its voice echoing like a chime against the stone. The living may not pass without tribute. Amenhotep took a step forward, his regal presence unshaken. What tribute do you demand? The guardian's burning gaze fixed on him. The weight of your soul. A sudden pressure filled the room. Amelia gasped, clutching her chest as a heavy invisible force pressed down on her shoulders. Samir dropped to one knee, struggling against the weight, while Marcus groaned, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Only Amenhotep remained standing. The guardian's voice rang out again. Meneptah's realm welcomes only the strong. Prove yourselves, or be crushed beneath the weight of eternity. Amelia's vision blurred. Her knees buckled, her pulse hammering. She had felt this before, the oppressive weight of something unseen, something unnatural. No, she gritted through her teeth. We won't bow. The weight increased, pressing her closer to the ground. Amenhotep's voice was steady. This is an illusion. Do not submit. Easier said than done, Marcus choked out. Amenhotep raised a hand, his voice shifting into the language of the ancients. The hieroglyphs on the guardian's body flickered, dimming for a fraction of a second. The pressure lifted, just slightly. Amelia forced herself upright, focusing on the symbols etched into the chamber's threshold. Something about them called to her, their meaning just beyond reach. Then it hit her. It's a test of willpower, she gasped. The stronger our resolve, the weaker the burden. Elena's eyes widened. We have to fight it. We have to resist. Amelia clenched her fists. She focused on the image of the tomb ahead, on their goal, on everything they had sacrificed to get here. She pushed back. The pressure wavered. Samir, seeing her stand, grit his teeth and did the same. Come on, then, he growled. Is that all you've got? One by one, the team forced themselves upright. The weight shuddered and began to fade. The guardian's fiery gaze dimmed. You have proven your worth. The path is open. With a final grinding sound, the colossal being stepped aside. The chamber trembled as a section of the far wall began to shift, revealing a narrow passage descending into pure darkness. A pulse of stale air rushed out, carrying the scent of decay and something else, something old and waiting. Amelia took a shaky breath. We made it. Amenhotep nodded, though his expression remained grave. This was only the first of the final trials. Meneptah's true power lies ahead. Marcus huffed, still catching his breath. Of course it does. Because why wouldn't it? Amelia turned toward the passage. The way forward was clear. But for the first time since the expedition began, she hesitated. Something about the darkness ahead felt different. It wasn't just shadow, it was absence. A void. And it was hungry. Still, she gripped the dagger in her hand and stepped forward. There was no turning back. The descent into the heart of the tomb had begun. Chapter 9, The Descent into Darkness. The stairway spiraled downward into the earth, the air growing colder with each step. The flickering glow of their torches barely reached the walls, leaving the space beyond them consumed by endless shadow. Amelia felt a chill snake down her spine. It wasn't just the cold, it was something deeper, an oppressive presence in the air. Something watching. Something waiting. Amenhotep walked ahead, his expression unreadable. We are close now. Samir shivered. Close to what? Our deaths? If we fail, Amenhotep replied calmly, then yes. Marcus let out a humorless laugh. Encouraging. Really? At last, the stairway ended, opening into a vast chamber. The ceiling soared high above them, lost in shadows, while massive stone columns stretched into the darkness. Hieroglyphs lined the walls, more intricate than anything Amelia had seen before. But the chamber was empty. No statues. No offerings. No golden sarcophagus. Only an altar at the far end of the room, its surface blackened and cracked. Elena frowned. This doesn't look like a burial chamber. Amenhotep studied the inscriptions, his eyes narrowing. Because it isn't. Amelia's pulse quickened. Then what is it? He turned to her, his face solemn. A prison. A sudden gust of wind howled through the chamber, though there was no source for it. Torches flickered. The darkness thickened. Then, the whispers returned. Not the lost souls of the labyrinth. Something older. Hungrier. A deep, resonant chant echoed through the chamber, as though the very walls were speaking. The hieroglyphs on the altar began to glow, their golden light bleeding into something red, something unnatural. Amenhotep stepped back. The binding is weakening. Amelia's heart pounded. Binding? A voice, low, ancient, full of malice, rumbled through the chamber. Who dares disturb my slumber? The shadows at the edges of the room shifted. Then they moved. From the darkness, a figure emerged. He was tall, draped in ceremonial robes of deep crimson and black, his skeletal hands adorned with golden rings. His face was hidden beneath a golden mask, the face of a jackal, the sigil of Seth. But it was his eyes that struck Amelia with terror. Twin orbs of burning amber light, not just glowing, but alive. Meneptah had awakened. The High Priest of Seth had returned. He lifted a hand, and the chamber shook with his power. The altar cracked further, black mist spilling from within. A force pressed against Amelia's chest, suffocating, as though reality itself had bent around him. "This is bad," Marcus muttered. "Very, very bad." Amenhotep stepped forward, his voice strong. "Meneptah, your reign is over. The gods have abandoned you." A slow, eerie laugh echoed through the chamber. "Then I shall make them remember me." With a flick of his hand, the shadows erupted. The darkness coiled and lunged. A wave of force sent Samir crashing into a pillar. Marcus barely managed to fire a shot before his bullets vanished into the void. Meneptah raised his hands, and from the black mist, figures emerged. The Forsaken had returned, only now, they were not bound by stone. They were fully formed, walking corpses, their bodies wrapped in decayed bandages, their hollow eyes glowing with the same unnatural light as their master. Elena screamed as one lunged at her, skeletal fingers reaching for her throat. Amelia yanked her back, driving her dagger into the thing's chest. It hissed, but did not fall. "Weapons won't work," Amelia shouted. "We need magic," Amenhotep finished. "We need to seal him again." Amelia's mind raced. The ritual. The altar. If they could reverse it. "Cover me," she yelled, dashing toward the altar. Amenhotep moved beside her, his hands already glowing with golden energy. "The dagger," he said. "It is tied to the binding. Use it." Amelia gripped the dagger, her bleeding palm staining the hilt. As she reached the altar, the glyphs beneath her feet shifted, responding to her presence. Meneptah turned toward her, his jackal mask tilting. "You would challenge me? A mortal?" The force of his gaze pinned her in place. Pain lanced through her skull, visions of fire, death, and endless darkness. But she forced herself to move. With the last of her strength, she drove the dagger into the altar. The chamber exploded with golden light. A howl of fury tore through the room as Meneptah reeled back, his body unraveling. The Forsaken collapsed into dust, their souls wrenched from the mortal plane. The hieroglyphs glowed brighter, sealing the darkness away. Meneptah's form flickered, his power unraveling. His eyes, burning with hate, locked onto Amelia. This is not the end. With one final, deafening cry, he was dragged into the abyss. Then, silence. The altar dimmed. The chamber stilled. And Amelia collapsed to her knees. The tomb was silent. The air felt lighter, as though the darkness had finally lifted. Amenhotep stood beside her, breathing heavily. "It is done." Samir groaned. "I think I cracked a rib." Elena sat up, rubbing her temples. Did we win? Marcus looked around. We're alive. That's good enough for me. Amelia exhaled, gripping the dagger tightly. They had done it. Meneptah was sealed. The adepts of Seth had failed. But as she looked down at the dagger, now etched with new symbols, pulsing faintly, she knew one thing for certain. It wasn't over. Something had changed. And whatever it was only just beginning.
Every story has an ending, but some mysteries live on. If you enjoyed this tale, don't let it fade into the shadows. Smash that like button and subscribe for more thrilling stories that will transport you beyond the veil of the ordinary. Subscribe to our channel and your name will appear at the beginning of our next video, where we will pleasantly thank you for your subscribing. Tap the bell icon so you never miss a journey into the unknown. Share your thoughts in the comments. What twists did you see coming? And what secrets do you think still remain? Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and let the next story begin.